So, uh, it's Kelly Reichardt, right?
Yeah.
First Cow, and so I'll just tell you guys, we're going to talk about First Cow, but I didn't even realize when I started watching First Cow who the director was. I knew it was a woman, but I didn't know anything about her. And then it wasn't until after the movie I looked her up and I realized, oh, she also does Wendy and Lucy, and I know Phil really loves that movie. So I decided that exact same. So the same Sunday, I actually watched both movies, which did somewhat impact my feelings about both of them a little bit. So anyway, we're going to talk, I guess, we started with First Cow, but I think we ended up thinking we'll talk a bit about Wendy and Lucy as well. So one of you guys feel free to start things off. I know, Phil, you're a huge fan of Wendy and Lucy. So
I am. And, that's one of the things I thought maybe talking to you guys, I might be able to figure out tonight. You've got two films. So I've been all over with Kelly Reichardt. You've got two films here where very little happens in either film. One of them I love, and one of them I found very disappointing. And I'm like, why? Why do I feel one way about Wendy and Lucy and not nearly as enthusiastic about First Cow?
First Cow is longer. So if you think that,
you're right,
it takes longer to get there.
It is much longer, actually.
Close to 2 hours. Close to
Wendy
2
and
hours.
Lucy's 80 minutes, because I was trying to fit it in tonight before we spoke, and First Cow is 2 hours and 2 minutes. So I hadn't thought about that. That's a good place to start. 42 minutes. And I even like First Cow more than. I don't think you have, Scott. Did you ever see Meek's Cutoff, Stephen?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay, because that I did not like at all. And then her other film, Certain Women, I was lukewarm on it the first time, a little bit, but I could see there was stuff I liked. And then I saw it a second time and I liked it. Now, her first film is also on Prime. And I can't think of the title right now.
Old Joy?
No.
Not
the film before that. She made one before that. So she's made 6 altogether now. And Old Joy, I know Stephen hates it. I like Old Joy, but I think I'm unduly influenced by the soundtrack. I've just been so all over with her. Tonight, I loved Wendy and Lucy, and I was fidgety during First Cow when I watched it on the weekend.
Well, let me ask you, without going into too much detail, just to get a sense of Kelly Reichardt's body of work. I obviously think that there are quite a few similarities between Wendy and Lucy and First Cow. Some clear differences as well. But do most of her movies kind of fall within a fairly, like, are they all kind of comparable in that they're kind of, well, I don't even want to say how. Like, are they all comparable basically? Can you tell us?
I think they're all mood pieces.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're very much all mood pieces. Every one that I've seen, for sure.
And lean, because to me it's the lean quality that.
Yeah,
they're beautiful. They're beautiful. They're Oregon. She takes her time, and I've gotten more accepted. I used to hate things that just took forever. I realized that that's not true. If I like a movie, I don't care. I use the example of La Ventura. The point is that nothing happens in that movie. It goes on for 2.5 hours. One of my favorites. So it's not whether or not something happens. For me, I'll just throw in a quick mention on Old Joy because I hated it so much. And it ties into the masculinity. The two characters in Old Joy, there's one, he's the kind of the hippie, and he's got his old buddy who used to be a hippie who's sort of sold out. They're going to go out and traipse around in nature. And the hippie is very insistent on trying to get his buddy to do stuff. And it rubbed me so badly that I think I need to watch it again and find out why it bothered me and that it wasn't in the movie. But having said that, the two guys in First Cow, I never got that sense at all. They seemed like a good pairing to me. They got to know each other. They were both well drawn and they had depth. So in that sense, I was comparing it to something that I haven't even seen for a long time. Now having watched Wendy and Lucy yesterday or something, and Wendy and Lucy, that's an entirely different pairing. It's a woman and her dog, and maybe that's why it appealed to me, at least at the time, because I had seen Old Joy and hated it. And so here comes this movie with Michelle Williams, who I love, and the dog, and so I like this one.
Did you guys notice how similar the two movies, the two that we're talking about, are at like the first 5 minutes of the two movies are? Because
Somebody walking around the woods.
well, not only that,
With a dog.
God, I'm looking at the first cow. You get the long shot of the ship going by in the
That's right.
water, and then you get the girl in the woods with her dog. And in Wendy and Lucy, you get the train. And I don't think it's not quite as long a shot or whatever, but it's clearly I think it's very deliberate. Like to go from a ship to a girl with her dog in the woods to a train to a girl in the woods with her dog. Obviously, the stories then move elsewhere. And I mean, as Stephen pointed out in something I think you wrote in an email, it was kind of odd, the whole beginning of First Cow, how it starts with the girl and her, like, girl, I never know whether to say girl or woman because I don't know how old the person was, but the person and her dog, it's like you never go back. And I mean, they discovered these two skeletons, so presumably it's the two guys.
Yeah.
I don't know what my point was, but I know you brought that up, Stephen, that you just found you couldn't
I was
figure out
excited
what did
because-
it have to do with the rest of the movie.
Yes,
or
the
something.
actress Aaliyah Shawkat's a favorite of mine. So I look forward to. Oh, look, she's already in the movie. I did no idea that was her only scene. One of the things I noticed right off that, since I don't often talk, I think, enough about the technical aspects, is that opening shot of that barge, that long barge.
Right, the barge. Yeah, I
And
called it a
because
ship.
it's Kelly Reichardt, it must have felt like it'd take 10 minutes to get across the screen. She was shooting at an Academy ratio, which didn't have a wide screen for that movie. Which, what's a big long barge just slowly going across the screen strikes me as the perfect thing for a widescreen movie. And so I thought that was rather interesting.
Audacious.
But
Yeah.
the point really to make is about this way the ending or the beginning eventually seemed oddly connected, is that I was so clueless, I didn't get it. I think I mentioned in the email. After I watched the movie, I went and read some things about it, and I've realized that the two guys were probably the skeleton guys from the beginning. I'd gone the whole movie thinking, why the hell did we get that first scene? And honestly, I didn't even realize at first that first scene was in modern time. I mean, I described it to my wife, who didn't watch it. And as soon as I said what the first scene was about, she said, what was she wearing? And I said, I don't know, modern clothes. Dumb. She didn't even watch it, and she picked up on that. And I didn't. I never saw that coming.
That's funny.
And then because Reichardt she has no problem being ambiguous in this movie and in others. So it's never specifically pointed out that those skeleton and the guys are the same. They probably are, but that's not. I don't think that she's necessarily as interested in just plot. So that's why a lot of times things don't seem to be happening.
Yeah.
Movie, I think they did have some things happen, but she's not going to just push the narrative along. If she wants to take her time, she will take her time. And so, slow cinema.
I found. Go ahead, Phil. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think Scott's absolutely right that First Cow begins with an obvious kind of allusion to her earlier, most successful film. But then, it's almost as if she's toying with you, because if you settle back and you think you're going to watch Wendy and Lucy Part 2, it's not that at all, because suddenly there are these two guys. I absolutely missed. I knew that it started modern day, but I missed, there is no transition. There's no fade out. There's no transition from one to the other. I can't remember exactly how it's done, but I think it's just a cut.
It's a foot.
It's like it's in the woods or something. Yeah.
I stuck a video on my site, one of those video essays where the guy said, this is my favorite, it was about editing. This is my favorite edit in the whole movie. She's digging in the dirt. And then we see a foot in the dirt, and because he understood, he's like, right away you notice it's a mole, but I didn't notice that part. But
Yeah.
say the transition is so smooth. It's like the bone in 2001 goes up.
I was thinking that actually.
You
Yeah.
know,
But that
goes
bone,
up in the apes and it comes down into space.
I know, but you pick up on the bone right away. I don't think you pick up on.
No, that's true.
I wasn't confused by the ending. In fact, when the ending happened, I said, okay, that's great. That's one of the things I do really like about it, that just the way their bodies are positioned, I knew right away why she had that whole 5-minute intro. So she could set it up for that one shot. I remember flashback to how the skeletons were situated. I also like the music at the beginning too.
Yeah,
You know,
the very
if I-
first song is fantastic.
Beautiful music. If I single out what do I like about First Cow, I'd go with the slow opening, the music, and the ingenious way that the beginning and the end are linked. And one thing I thought about, because you said you just recently watched Barry Lyndon. You know, I'm trying to figure out what First Cow is about. And is it a statement on American capitalism and all that? Probably. But I also think it's about, and this ties in with the beginning and the end, that great line that Barry Lyndon finishes with, where something about they're all dead now, and in the end, they're all equal. So it's these two guys, and then they go through all of this, and what does it matter in the end? Nothing. There are a couple of skeletons in the ground. It seemed to have that kind of what's the word? Not acerbic, not wry, but kind of just downbeat or stoic view of life. Stoicism.
Right.
That's what I want. I had a very stoic view of life. In the end, we're all the same.
You know,
I
it's
like that she had so many of the qualities you're talking about, but they were just under the surface. It was a
Yeah.
Western, you know, had many of the themes of a Western, but she never stopped and beat any of those themes over the head. It was a movie about those two guys and their relationship and their coming together and their camaraderie.
Well,
And
it starts with the quote about friendship, right?
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, we're an emerging civilization in America's history, blah, blah, blah. It's all in there. But she doesn't, she's not like, it's not like the Wild Bunch where the old guys sit around and say, oh, we're gonna, no, it just happens kind of in the background. And
yeah, although I think I'm very much in the minority here, and this judging from, you know, looking at what, you know, people on Letterboxd were saying about the movie, and that movie got uniformly like 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, all across the board. And I like it, but I didn't love it. But for me, the strange thing was I thought it actually kind of failed a little bit in what I think it was supposed to be about. Is I found the relationship between the two guys after a while, it was just a little too fuzzy for me or something, or warm and fuzzy. I mean, like there was just something about it that just like Phil used the word stoic, and there was, I felt like I mean, I kind of admire that she didn't go for some obvious conflict or something. So that might have just been a sort of silly place to go. But I found what I kind of appreciated a little more in the movie. I tended to actually like the scenes where there were more people in the movie and that sort of stuff. I like the bar scenes. Some of that stuff reminded me a little bit of McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Like there was a bit of a freewheeling quality that I really liked. I really, the one character, and maybe he's a bit of a cliche, I found him really funny though, was that, I don't know what his role was, but that sort of aristocratic guy. He's the guy that they go to his place, right? They go to his place, and he says, you know, do you know how to make clafou tea? And I love the way he pronounces clafou.
Something really weird has happened to the sound.
Oh, you didn't hear me? Can you hear me now?
I can now.
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, I was thinking, so you know the character I mean, right? He's the guy who hires the cookie to make
Toby
this
Jones.
drink. Toby Jones. Okay.
Yeah.
He reminded me a little of Anthony Hopkins in The Elephant Man for some reason. Like he just had this kind of interesting demeanor, but I don't know, for some reason I found myself most sort of interested in the movie when there were other people, and I got a little bored of the relationship between the two guys for some reason. And I mean, there were some great moments between them. I liked when they first kind of went to the King Lou's place. Actually, that was another parallel between the two movies. They in Wendy and Lucy, they would often, what Michelle Williams would often call the dog Lou, and then this character's name was Lou. That's maybe a little bit of a stretch, but I like the scene where they first went to his little place, and there's an actual shot where the Lou guy is outside chopping wood, and Cookie is in his doorway sweeping. And it's a real. I watched that scene a couple of times because it's really well mixed and edited. It's almost musical the way you hear the broom sweeping with him chopping the wood, and you've got the picture of Lou in the window, and you see Cookie in the door. Like it's a beautifully shot and edited. So there are some really good moments between them. But I was personally more interested when there were other people in the film, and I did found it started to wear on a little bit. Also, I will say I watched both of those movies, and this unfortunately maybe impacted me a little more with Wendy and Lucy because I watched that one later in the day, later at night actually. But it was on a Sunday recently, and it was kind of one of those. I'm feeling depressed about COVID-19 a little bit today. There was just stuff going on. And I swear to God, when I finished Wendy and Lucy, although I could admire a lot of things about that movie, that this was not the right movie for me to watch today. I was not in the mood for this. Like,
Yeah,
I really
no.
enjoyed it despite that. And I've flipped through it again since, and I can recognize some of the great things about the movie. But it's, if you're feeling kind of in a COVID, are we ever going to get out of COVID, and is the world not going to hell in a handbasket? It's not the number one movie I would recommend to people.
That
Like,
matters when what you bring to the movie when you watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did
you hear us, by the way, Stephen? Because you had disappeared.
Yes, I'm sorry. I disappeared
okay.
for a reason, which was because you mentioned McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and I know how you guys big fans of them. I'm pretty big too, but I thought there's an actor who's in both that movie and
Rene Auberjonois.
Is that the old guy? Is that the old guy?
He was a guy who had a bird on his shoulder.
I thought he looked familiar.
It might have been his last role.
I thought that was explicit McCabe reference.
That's perfect. Yeah.
I think it has some Dead Man in it, and I think that very specific reference there is Gary Farmer's in both, right? I think she is paying homage to those two films, and she might even, your Wild Bunch point might be well taken. She might be trying to flip the Wild Bunch on its head, being a woman. And Meek's cutoff, like, I would prefer she stays away from Westerns. I think she's better in the here and now, certain women, and Wendy and Lucy. One question, and you said you like Toby Jones. It's funny because I'm watching it, and this one thing is bothering me, and they even address it in the film. Like, how did Toby Jones not know this was going on? And someone brought that up. He said, doesn't he know what's going on? And he said, well, I like the response. Some people just can't imagine people stealing from them. Because, his cow's not giving any milk. These two guys appear out of nowhere.
Yeah, I know, it is a bit weird.
Baked goods. It's like you want to grab them and say, hey, you think something might be going on here?
Well, and it actually might contradict a little bit, what I think is maybe one of the funniest lines in the movie, when he first is trying to get Cook, when he's invites Cookie, like, hey, I've got this guy coming over, and he's always kind of mocking, the wildlife or whatever. And he says, so can you do that? He goes, I want to humiliate him. I love that idea, but it does sort of like, he's not some kind of, babe in the woods guy or something. So it did seem a bit, now that you're mentioning it, does seem a bit unrealistic that they would just be doing all of this under his nose or whatever. So
I know. So I wanted to just say about Wendy and Lucy, I find that film so moving. It's a film that pushes buttons. I mean, how much easier can it be to move people than to have a dog, this beautiful dog, disappear, and this sort of forlorn woman lose the dog? I mean, it's like Lassie go home or comes home or whatever. So it's an easy film in that regard. What I really, even more than the dog though, I love the relationship with that man, older man. The guy who helps her out, and that is so unforced and so natural.
Yes.
And then when he rolls up in the car, and you see he has another life because that woman is there, who presumably is not his wife, but who he has a relationship with, and he gives her that money, and they show you how much money he gives her. It's like next to nothing.
$7, I think.
Yeah, you see a 5 and a 1.
Yeah.
But that it's all he can give to her, and I just am so moved by that. I find the ending really moving. That I know the first time I watched it, you get the big reunion. It had never occurred to me until it happened that she would then realize that the dog had a better home here, and she may return for one day. But it had this great happy ending that they kind of pull away from you at the end. I love that stuff. And she's
Yeah.
just great. She's great. I've liked her in other films, but I think you've probably seen more than I have, Stephen, but I can't think of the other films I've seen her in. She's got a pretty big role in Certain Women. This is the best for me.
She is. One of the things I like about her is you could take any two movies she made and she's not the same. You could go back and say she got her start on Dawson's Creek, you know?
Really? Wow.
Katie
Never
Holmes,
watched
and there
that.
was James Vanderbeek, and there was Joshua Jackson. Oh, and this other person. She wasn't the main character. And now who are they? And but she's Michelle Williams. She played Marilyn Monroe in that one movie.
Yeah.
Marilyn.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Look at her. She doesn't look like Marilyn Monroe. She doesn't. It's totally odd, and yet I very much believe that she was, at least she was Norma Jean, if not Marilyn. I love this thing where at one point when she says, "You want to watch me be her," and then she goes out to the people who were with the cameras and stuff. She's brilliant in that and believable as that character. And here she is in Wendy and Lucy.
What about Fosse and Gwen Verdon? Did you watch that?
No, I didn't, but you're right.
Okay.
That's another example. And she must have had to learn to dance.
She's in, I think she's in Dick.
Is she in that?
You're
She
right,
one of
she's
the
one of the
two?
girls.
Yeah, she's one of the
Oh,
girls. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
Who's
she's
the
really
other
good in
one?
that,
Her
actually.
and who else?
Her and, my God, is it?
Is it Kirsten Dunst?
No, yeah, it is Kirsten Dunst. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's Kirsten Dunst. Yeah.
gotta watch that again. No, she's
Yep.
great. I don't know if she's won an Academy Award yet. I think she probably did.
I think so.
Because obviously she went through a horrible personal tragedy with Heath Ledger, right? Were they not married when he committed suicide? So I guess the industry's behind her after that. And I think she did win an Academy Award.
One thing about Wendy and Lucy, sort of further to what you were saying, Phil, I mean, it's really well done in this respect, is that you have these moments that are very touching, like with the guy giving her the money and stuff. And the way he does it is great. Like, don't say anything and don't look at her because I don't want her to see, which might have been a cover for a way to like just make sure she was going to take it and not start something, whatever.
Yeah.
But so on the one hand, they're like, it's a really touching moment, but it actually kind of like all that stuff sort of depressed me a little bit too. Like I tied in a little bit with the scene where she got out of the jail, I think the next morning or something. And in order to get out, you have to pay for some, to do some paper or some release papers or something.
$50.
And she didn't even have a credit card to her name, right? And it makes sense. I mean, that's true to the character. But for some reason, that stuff was kind of like really getting me down watching it. And it's not a comment on the movie not being good for that reason, but there was a lot of like sort of I couldn't sort of see past sort of the economic depravity in the movie in a way. And it's not beaten over the head. Like it's told in a very simple, completely realistic type of story. Like I don't know, it was kind of masterfully done, that stuff. But it did, unfortunately, that one night sort of have the impact of kind of depressing the hell out of me a little bit too. Like it just felt so realistic. It's just like, God, there's probably people like going through this every single day all over.
Oh, I know.
Everywhere. And you can see those people like at your local plaza or something, but she takes you right there. I mean, I don't know.
I was reminded of Nomadland, because in Nomadland you have, well, they call themselves nomads. They don't call themselves homeless, but you have a group of people who are, including Frances McDormand, who are in somewhat of a similar situation. But without being Pollyannish about it, those people, a lot of them have chosen that life, and they never look down on it. And the movie doesn't look down on them.
Yeah.
And Lucy, it's not that they look down on her, but as you pointed out, it's kind of miserable. I was shocked, to be honest, when I saw what I'd written about it some years ago. And I talked about Michelle Williams, I talked about the dog. I didn't say anything about the fact that, as it seemed to me this time, what a sad movie. It's just so depressing. And I didn't remember that,
Yeah.
It's just like, I told my wife, it's like she's Job. It's like things just keep piling on her,
You know what, though? I would say, though,
before.
it is depressing, but it reminded me of that Kale comment about Nashville, where she can put people on screen who are depressed, but I don't feel depressed being around them. I think about,
Yeah.
for instance, the guy who tells the story about running that tractor over right at the beginning of the film. That's funny. The people she encounters when she takes those cans to try to get a little money, they're funny.
Yeah.
The one guy, he has one of the stupid line. He's talking to her and then he goes, "Hey, dog."
Yeah.
I like when she gives the cans to him, rather than wait. And he just says, "Oh, that was a really cool thing to do." On the depressing end of it, the conversation she has with her sister and brother-in-law,
Yeah.
clearly just don't give in, couldn't care less about her. She even has to hide that she's in dire straits. So everything's fine because she knows they're going to help her anyway. Love the woman at the pound,
Yeah.
doing what she can. I think a lot of the film is just people doing what they can. The mechanic he was just, you just watched Minari, Stephen.
Yes, Will Patton.
Oldham. Will Patton, sorry, because Will Oldham's in too. Will Patton, he's great as the mechanic. Like they don't try to sugarcoat it. He's not he's not ready. He's not gonna say, "Oh, we'll do the work for free. You look like you're in bad shape." He just says, "Got to rebuild the engine." I just like all this stuff.
I think that the characters, a lot of them were, as you say, they were enjoyable to watch. They were human and they weren't depressing.
No.
In terms of the whole line, at the start of the movie, Wendy has a crappy car and wants to go to Alaska. At the end of the movie, she doesn't have a car, she doesn't have Lucy, and God knows how she's going to get to Alaska. So in that sense, as the movie ends, I'm thinking, holy cow, this is the most depressing ending I ever saw. Even though at least Lucy would have a good life,
Well, and at least she got on the train. At least the train was somewhere too, right? Like it left it lit. Like if she didn't catch that train or she had no way to get out of that town, what would she have done? She doesn't have a penny in her pocket. I mean, it is hard to think.
Didn't you just hate the teenager at the?
Oh, I know.
He is so, and I mean, he's just doing his job, right? But he's also he wants to score points with the boss, and he gets moralistic. Hey, look, we got rules. You got to do it. It's a matter of principle.
Yeah.
And the first time I watched it, I honestly thought the boss was going to step in and say, "Well, just don't."
Me
do
too.
it again. But instead, he seems powerless. It's like he's letting the teenager run the show.
But it is good because the movie doesn't it doesn't sort of cast too much judgment on the people like that who do kind of do her harm, or like, as you say, the mechanic or whatever. Like it could take an obvious route and make it seem like, God, these people are just like further bringing her down, and they are literally in many ways, but it does seem very naturalistic to me. Like it seems like you could exactly see that sort of thing happening to a person in this situation, and they're not bad people in the movie. They're just they're just human, right?
Yeah.
And I'm glad she doesn't turn them into, the director, does not turn them into villains in any way. I mean, the kid is just a stupid kid who, suck up kind of thing to the boss. But
she does get to chew the kid out a little bit the next day.
Yeah, and
in front of the mother. You should be very proud of your son. He's a hero. He's done a heroic thing.
Which you're glad to see too, right? Like you, like
exactly.
I think that what she has a clear notion about what she wants to do with her movies, and she does it kind of again and again without repeating herself. And I wonder, I guess she gets attention, but someone like Malick, who he does, people look at his movies and they say, well, there's a guy who's doing what he thinks he needs to do. David Lynch, there's a guy who Kelly Reichardt's making the movies that she wants to make, and she's making them how she wants to make them. I don't even have to like them to be impressed by the fact that she's still at it. I'd say made half a dozen movies on budgets of probably $5, heavily working apparently. I'm impressed by that.
No, and I do
get a bit of that. We've talked about, Scott and I have talked about this in connection with the two Andersons and other people, where I think she, again, depends on what you feel about Wendy and Lucy. I think she made a legitimately great film with Wendy and Lucy, and then I think it takes people sometimes a film or two to catch up on. catch up with that director. And I think she's getting acclaim now for First Cow. That is a fan of Wendy and Lucy. You know, I think, well, where were you a couple films ago? So
I do.
it's almost like delayed.
Yeah, I don't mind saying honestly, like I thought the lavish praise online for First Cow was just a little.
Yeah.
It's just a little out of step with the movie I saw, and I do think it's a fine movie, and I actually would conceivably watch it again at some point, and it would probably reveal more. But I was a little blown away by just how uniform the high praise was for it, and I wonder if some of that is a, you know, anytime there's a, I don't want to say, this is going to sound like damning to the director or whatever, and I don't mean it in that way, but anytime there is a very well made, intelligent movie that kind of, you know, counteracts, you know, the kind of noise of the usual Hollywood movie and stuff, I do feel there's a little bit of, like, who isn't kind of, you know, what moviegoer isn't kind of longing for something a little quieter, a little more subtle and stuff like that. And I'm not knocking that, but I just wonder if that's, like, I'd like to see how someone like Kale would respond to First Cow. I could see her going either way with it, but I could see her thinking like, this is just like a simpering, you know, these two simpering guys who, you know, we're supposed to love from start to finish kind of thing. By the way, I do want to remember, so there's just one point I really wanted to make that I think was about First Cow. I forgot. Sorry to jump all over the place. But one of the things I thought was actually kind of weak about that as well was the character Lou. Like, and here's where it gets back to, like, ties in with me just finding the relationship a little boring at times, is that he sort of in a couple of scenes, I think, there's this suggestion that he's this very mischievous guy. And like, even I think even at one point he says something like, well, you know, what that's interesting isn't a little bit dangerous or something.
Yeah.
They don't play on that possibility at all. Like, they just, it's sort of hinted at that he's this mischievous guy and he's probably done some interesting things to get to where he is and to manage to even stay alive, because I'm, you know, but it's kind of too tamped down or something. And it is just a little too, it just was a little too polite or something for me in the end. I don't know. I just want to make that point about him. I thought his character was a little undeveloped. Like, I just thought there could have been a bit more tension or a bit more like actual danger. Like, he does push Cookie a little more, you know, towards doing, you know, getting this business going and stuff. So there is.
It's pretty easygoing for a guy that talks about danger and stuff like that.
Yeah, it just wasn't realized, or maybe just wasn't pushed. So anyway.
I'm almost positive Kale would not like Kelly Reichardt. I just, and these two guys in First Cow, I think immediately I quote this beginning so much. I quote this review, the beginning of her Tender Mercies review, where she says something about halfway through the film, somebody says, I guess I don't have to explain how I feel about you. Robert Duvall says that. And she goes, well, of course you have to explain, because we have no idea. You know, the whole film you've been speaking in 2-word sentences. And I think she would make the same complaint about the two guys in First Cow. There's supposed to be a deep friendship, but how much do they actually say to each other? So I don't think she would be on the film's rhythm. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you never know ultimately, but
Scott mentioned about how maybe a movie like this gets a little overpraised because of it's out of step with stuff that people are tired of. I've never come up with a name for this genre, but so I have a long name, which I say movies that are known for what they don't do.
Yeah.
Like all of her movies, I like that. As you say, there's not a lot of big old fighting and action and blowing up, and there's not a lot of overacting.
Her use of CGI is quite minimal, I think.
yes. And so for some people, they're like, is this how you said it? Oh, I'm so glad that I can have one movie where I can see that. And that's not a critique, but it's a genre, even if I can't think of a name.
And it doesn't, like, sometimes that can be a cynical thing, like it can be, and it doesn't have to be, though. I mean, this director just clearly wants to make, you know, sort of small, quiet movies, and there's something honorable about that as well. But how the audience might accept it, it's just, it has that tinge to it. Like, it's just different than everything else that's out there or something.
Well, in a different way, I think that every time I'm sitting in the theater and I see trailers for two types of films, World War II films and costume dramas. And I
Yeah.
think they both tap into that. You know, they want whatever audience doesn't want to go see superhero film. But they're forgetting, I think, that, you know, there are people like us that don't necessarily want superhero
Don't want
films
either.
unless they're really good, but don't want costume dramas. And I don't want to see World War II films. I mean, I'm sure that sounds terrible, but it's just war films in general I'm not big on. So it's like they're thinking either or, but there are other kinds of films.
So
So why all that? I really want to see Godzilla versus Kong. I just say out front. I'll be very disappointed if the previews
There are always exceptions. Yeah.
exaggerating its quality, because the previews
Right.
I would like to watch them over and over again already.